It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Welcome, everyone. That's right. You are with 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside softball enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. Nick, we had a big night of softball on Thursday, but we got football on Friday. It's a football Friday, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, there's not more I can ask for than if Missouri softball was playing because I enjoy watching them. I watched Oklahoma, Texas. They were on along with the NBA Finals because, we have 4 TVs in the sports department. So I had the Chiefs softball game on one, NBA Finals on another, and then the Texas-Oklahoma softball game. And then the fourth one I can't remember because Rose was already over for the day. I think we just had it on ESPN2 or Fox. Fox Sports. Can't remember.
Royals play in the afternoon, and the NHL playoffs don't resume for like another 3.5 months. So,
exactly.
Well, we're going to talk about it. Well, we're going to talk about all the things that involve the Chiefs. So we'll talk a little bit about softball later. We're going to talk about some football Friday. Obviously, Nick, the big conversation in the last 24 hours has been the story involving BJ Thompson, which we can happily report that BJ is doing much better after he suffered a cardiac arrest at the team facility on Thursday morning. Harrison Butker went to get help once he saw that his teammate was in trouble during a special teams meeting. Went to go get Rick Burkholder, who activated the team's medical emergency plan, which, Nick, they had just practiced and gone through on Monday, and went through life-saving procedures for this young man and got him the care that he needed. And fortunately, we can report that as of Friday morning that he is alert, he is conscious, and is responding. And the outlook is very positive from what we've been told. So it's an incredible outcome, Nick. But hearing Rick Burkholder explain the situation and what happened just reminds you of just, what these teams go through to take care of these players and how you have to be prepared for just about everything.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right about it. I mean, in terms of BJ Thompson, you're hoping everything's okay for him, that, he didn't have any issues based on the reported seizure that he had and then cardiac arrest afterwards. Obviously, those are very concerning things, and I know those kind of from doing some research on it last night and looking stuff up. I mean, the one can lead to the other given the situation and everything. So for him, here's the one thing I think more than anything else that I hope when they get to that point, and you're hoping they get to that point, is that was one of the best places that could have happened for him to get the medical care that he needed. Because I thought about that last night. And then to hear Andy say that today during the presser when you and I are standing there at the press conference, like, that was the thing I was thinking about. Is like, if that happens to somebody when they're driving a vehicle, or, maybe they're at the house by themselves, or maybe they're out in public and somebody there doesn't know what's going on or what to do or how to help. For the Chiefs to have been through those type of protocols, and for a lot of other organizations probably around the world have gone through protocols like that and things of that nature, to help save a life in that regard, and to help stabilize it to where hopefully there's no issue in any way, shape, or form, and that, BJ Thompson's going to be okay, and they can find out what potentially caused that and be able to kind of, manage whatever they need to manage down the road for what potentially caused that. Like, you're just hoping all that works itself out and everything. And more than anything else, you're not really, it's for, obviously for you and me, and I hope for a lot of other people out there, it's not necessarily like, oh, what are they going to do with defensive end? It's like, I'm glad that he's okay. Because I know BJ Thompson's been respectful, I think, to you and I were, and, anytime he's talked at the podium or been around the locker room, and I don't, you don't wish ill will to anybody in that locker room, or, on the coaching staff or organization, anything in shape or form. And that's where, like, sometimes when you and I get those comments sent to us about, like, well, they should bench him, they should do this, they should do that, and not talking about Thompson, but just in general, like, at the end of the day, you and I guess over time, the fact that we're in there on a regular basis and we get to see and get to chat with some of those guys and get to know them as human beings, not just, player 53 out on the football field or player 17 out on the football field, or, whatever number they may have, that you're more mindful with your words, you're more mindful with the comments, but also you do kind of, think about them as humans more so than just, like some people kind of do with fantasy football or a video game or something like that.
Yeah, and I was reminded with this whole thing, my mind went back to a couple of events. One, obviously, I think everybody remembers is, in 2021 when Andy Reid fell ill after the game against the Chargers and was taken to the hospital. That was another example of the Chiefs medical staff enacting their plans for when a medical emergency does take effect and what you do. They obviously took care of the coach and got him medical help immediately. But my predecessor at Chiefs Digest, Herbie Teope, wrote a story back in 2015 about Tavon Rooks, who suffered a myocardial infarction on the football field at training camp in St. Joe. And the Chiefs staff responded in just the same way as they did with BJ Thompson. They got him the help that he needed. And, and Tavon absolutely credited the Chiefs training staff, team's training staff, medical staff, and the staff at the Mosaic Life Care up in St. Joe with saving his life. I mean, it was a life-threatening event, and it's just another example. We've seen them. I mean, Damar Hamlin is another, example from the league. They go through these protocols for a reason, and we're very fortunate that they haven't lost any lives. I mean, but this stuff is serious, and they treat it very seriously. Had they not gone through all of this training and all of these plans, might have gone differently. And I'm grateful that they do. We are absolutely hoping for the very best for BJ. It would be incredible to see him return to this team and get back on a football field. I don't know what his goals coming out of this are going to be, but he's obviously a popular teammate. The team talked about him last night at the softball game, and again, today, obviously acknowledging what happened. We wish him absolutely the very best. And then, I guess, Nick, I mean, it's hard to transition, but the team transitioned today, going from getting the update about BJ and getting the good news this morning that he was alert and conscious, and going back on the football field and getting back to practice. And it certainly looked like it was a good diversion for them in their minds, because it looked like a team that was pretty fiery and enjoying themselves today.
Yeah, you can tell. You can partly tell that they know how many days are left. Not in a bad way, but in they're just inching closer to somebody is whenever school's about to get out for the summer, and they'll get a handful of weeks, 5 to 6 weeks after next week when mandatory minicamp's over. So yeah, I mean they're putting in good work from the times you and I have been out there. They're efficient, they're effective. I mean, and the guys, some guys are taking advantage of their opportunities to really try to force themselves onto the roster when they have to make decisions. And so, as we always say, when the pads come on, they will have another opportunity to really kind of lock their opportunity in to be on the 53-man roster.
Yeah, and next week, once we get to the mandatory mini camp, we will get a little bit more of an update on maybe who is voluntarily away from OTAs and what the injury situation on maybe a few other players is. There were obviously a few players missing on Friday that we have seen before, some new ones that were missing. So we'll get maybe a better idea. I mean, Andy Reid gave us at least a couple of small updates today. Hollywood Brown and Jalen Watson are dealing with muscular tweaks, very similar to the nature of Xavier Worthy. Hollywood Brown did go through positional drills and conditioning. I think Jalen may have gone through a little bit of that as well, but neither one went through any of the team periods, Nick. Anything that stands out to you about the injury report on Friday, and maybe just who was there, who was not there, who was not participating?
Not necessarily from an injury perspective, because we don't really necessarily know the status, but the fact that this is the third week in a row where Kadarius Toney isn't out there kind of makes me start to wonder, and I'll be curious if he's at mandatory minicamp. Like that'll be my question is, okay, when it's mandatory, is he out there? So you're hoping to see him out there and working with the team and everything, as long as there's not some injury that we don't know about that hasn't really, I don't know, because I'm not eliminating anything, because I don't want people to think that I don't want to put anything on him because we don't know the situation or status right now. I just know that he hasn't been out there for the three media days open to OTAs. So I don't know if he's been out there on other OTA days when media wasn't there and he's got stuff going on, or if there's an injury. I don't know. So like that's where, when we all know that it's mandatory next week, we can kind of start to answer that question. But I mean, look, with Hollywood Brown and Worthy not being out there, they gave a lot of wide receivers who some opportunities to work with 15 and get a lot of good reps, and we can get into that in a minute. But is there anything stuck out for you, Andrew Wise?
Yeah, and once again, I mean, not injury. We don't know if injury related, but I talk about being a spirited practice. It was a little bit quieter because Isaiah Pacheco was not at practice on Friday, and he's usually one of the guys chirping the most. So it was definitely a little bit quieter without Isaiah, and we don't know. I mean, and to your point, remember, practice was postponed from Thursday to Friday. There could have been guys that absolutely had things scheduled or events, the commitments that were on Friday that they couldn't be there on Friday. They were planning on being there for a Thursday practice. So we don't know. We'll get a better idea next week. But that relates to, with Pacheco not being there, running backs also getting a lot more reps with the first team and with Mahomes and Wentz and getting to see everything. Let's get into that. Let's get into the observations and the offensive side of the football. What did you see on Friday, especially like we've been talking about in this situation? We get to see kind of the week to week. We're maybe not seeing the micro improvements that players are making day to day, but we're seeing at least the week to week progress that these guys on the offensive side are getting.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to say his name again. It's going to happen. I apologize because people are probably tired of hearing it now, but Nico Remigio, I mean.
Oh, I knew where you were going.
That guy just keeps making plays. Like Mahomes threw one right there and like in a tight window, and Remigio Wynn was able to get it, and then Wentz threw some to him that he was able to get, and Olajuwon threw a couple to him that he was able to get. So I mean, collectively, like Remigio's taking advantage of every single rep he gets, every single chance he gets. He is making the catches. He's trying to make plays, and he's getting separation to catch the football and to try to get upfield and really kind of showcase who he is. So, I mean, it doesn't matter who you put him with. He's becoming a favorite of all three of the quarterbacks that do most of the work.
I mean, I'm with you too. I mean, it has absolutely been impossible during this offseason program to not be impressed by Nico Remigio. Let me get it right there. He's been impressive. There is absolutely no doubt about it. I am not trying to be a wet blanket, Nick. I don't want unfair expectations on the player, on the kid. And I also don't want, unfair, maybe unrealistic expectations for the fans too, because like I said, I'm not trying to be a wet blanket here. I've been genuinely impressed by Nico. I was impressed with him last year before the injury and what we saw. There's a lot to like. Let's talk about undrafted receivers for just a quick moment. I'm not gonna give you the big quiz, Nick, because the big one is that to tell you that there's 5 undrafted receivers or pass catchers, let's put it that way, because one of them was a tight end, that have had 500-yard receiving seasons for Andy Reid. He or his team only acquired 3 of them. 2 of them, James Thrash was one. The Eagles signed as a free agent. He had 3 500-yard seasons for Reid in Philadelphia, but Washington was the one that acquired him and developed him, so I'm going to give them credit. Chad Lewis, tight end, had a season for Randy Reid, but it was the previous regime that signed him as an undrafted free agent, so it wasn't Andy Reid. Here's the trivia question, Nick. There are 3 players that have been acquired by Andy Reid or his general managers, whomever they may be, that have had a 500-yard receiving season. Would you like to try and guess those 3? Should I just tell you? One of them, I think, is fairly easy.
All right. You want me to guess them?
Yes. If you want to. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here.
Albert Wilson should be one of them.
That's the one I thought would be the easiest.
Freddie Mitchell is potentially another one.
Freddie Mitchell was not the one in Philadelphia. There was one in Philadelphia.
The one in Philadelphia, okay?
And I can tell you, he has ties to Kansas City and Andy Reid.
So the question for me would be Chad Hall, potentially.
It's a great guess, but not Chad Hall.
Not Chad Hall. Okay, give me a minute. Because I'm really wanting to get the Philly one. That's the one I'm really after right now.
It is a very familiar name to you.
Yeah. You're talking about in Philly or Kansas City?
Probably more familiar to you in Kansas City, but
I bet it's just if you're going down the road where I think it's Todd Pinkston.
Not got Todd Pinkston. A good guess in the right direction.
All right. Oh, Greg Lewis.
Greg Lewis was the undrafted receiver with a 500-yard season for Andy Reid in Philadelphia. Yes.
There's a third one right now. Is that purely Philly or KC?
That one is in Kansas City.
Okay, that one's in Kansas City, undrafted. And they're undrafted, correct?
Undrafted. Yes. Okay. Purely undrafted, 500-yard season.
Yeah, just let me get through the Rolodex here real quick.
This is a little trickier one.
Is it though? Because if they had 500 yards, then it shouldn't be as tricky. I'm just going to go through elimination because people are probably getting bored right now. So
I think they're trying to guess too, or they're jumping on Wikipedia and Pro Football Reference.
Do what?
Or they're jumping on Wikipedia and Pro Football Reference and trying
I thought you were talking about me. I was like, you can see, I'm.
No, your hands are free. I see you going through the memory box there.
Yeah, no, because I'm going year by year right now. In terms of
the Mind Palace, I see it working.
In terms of undrafted, man, do you want to give me? I'll let you. If you want to give me a year, you're welcome to. Just because I don't want to keep people waiting.
The year the player had 500 yards, or when they were acquired?
When they were first acquired with the team.
I do have it in front of me, so let me pull it up. First year was 2019.
Oh, okay. So I can thank you. That helps me go further on my Rolodex. I appreciate that. Okay, so 2019 undrafted. They were on that Super Bowl. They were on the Super Bowl squad.
Because I'm double checking to make sure it wasn't 2018, and there was like something I'm not thinking about here.
Mm-hmm. Not McCollum. No, he was drafted.
He was acquired in 2018, but he did spend the year on IR.
Did spent the year on IR before?
I believe it was on IR. I think that's why he didn't play is that year. Yes, he spent the season on IR.
'19 Super Bowl team. Because AJ Jenkins is already gone, then John Baldwin's already gone. Donnie Eber's gone at that point. Junior Hemingway's not there anymore. 2019. Devin Wiley was a long time before that.
And I can tell you his 500-yard season with the Chiefs was in 2021.
And he was an undrafted guy who was there for 18, 19, 20, 21.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not DeMarcus Robinson because he was drafted. I remember that one. It's not Tyreek because he was drafted. McColl was drafted. Sammy Watkins was drafted and it's acquired.
This is a tough. This is the one I thought was the toughest. So
yeah, no, it's proven to be, and I don't like it. I mean, I could keep racking it up, but since we're on a podcast, I really don't want to waste any more people's time.
Kansas State legend Byron Pringle.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There you go. And my only point going down this road is as high as I am on Nico Remigio, let's tap the brakes. Because if Nico Remigio becomes a fantastic undrafted receiver, this is the comp we're talking about. I mean, I think he looks great, but right now. But what he reminds me of, at least from the highlight plays and what we're seeing, is I'm thinking of like a guy like DeMarcus Robinson, who is another player that I think is a good comp. Because if Nico Remigio becomes a guy that puts up 500 yards in a season, that's a really, really good 7th round draft pick. I mean, they just most undrafted guys don't become quality contributors like that. I don't want anybody to think that when we're talking about how great we've seen Nico Remigio that we're talking about he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver and you're going to be like Hollywood Brown. Who? I mean, maybe he does that. There have been some. I mean, obviously Antonio Gonzalez became Antonio Gonzalez. Antonio Gates. I'm combining my tight ends into a whole new guy there, Nick. Became a 1,000-yard receiver, a 1,000-yard player. That doesn't mean Nico's going to be that. He could be. I don't know. But those would be my comps. If he becomes an Albert Wilson for you, if he becomes a Byron Pringle, that's a very good integral piece of an offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt, I'm going to have to say two things here.
You're just going to poop. You're going to wait until the pads come on.
No, I mean, look, it's, I mean, look, I mean, I can't help who flashes on the football field. Like, I can't help that. And he's doing that right now. Am I saying that he's a lock for the 53? No, but I mean, he's putting himself in great position to get himself the reps to be able to prove himself. Like, so I mean, that's the number one thing you're trying to do in OTAs is to prove that you can execute what the coaches want, what they want to see from you, and to be able to get those reps, whether it's with the ones, twos, or something like that whenever training camp starts up. So I mean, that's where I think he's making the impression that he needs to make. So for me personally, like, I don't have brakes on my train for that one. But I am going at a steady speed, so,
and that's where I completely agree, because when you're talking about Hollywood Brown not practicing and you're talking about Rashee Rice not being out there, Xavier Worthy hasn't been out there, when you got three top guys not getting reps, everybody else gets more. And that I completely agree with, because Nico Remigio has grabbed every single rep that he's gotten and has just absolutely won it. Mm-hmm. So there's no knock there, because this kid's getting his opportunities and making the most of them. I hope he absolutely crushes it. I mean, it'd be great if he becomes a 1,000-yard receiver for this team. I just want to give the kid a break, because there have been some times fairly recently where I think some players have not gotten a good break because maybe they have been overhyped for who they are and what they are, because they're making great plays when you can't touch anybody and you can't hit anybody. And then what happens? So that's all I'm saying, Nick, is just your mileage may vary. Only time I'm going to drop that reference today, Nick.
It's not, but I appreciate it.
It's not. You appreciate it. What else did you from the offense on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, look, like Justin Watson and Mahomes were on fire today, because there was times where, like, he isn't even making his break yet. Patrick knows exactly where he's going, and by the time his head turns, that ball is right there for him, so he can do what he needs to near the boundary or to go track it and catch it down. There's one time Justin was just starting to make his break, and Patrick already had that ball in the air, and he was 40 some yards away from him. I was like, when I saw it, I was like, I don't definitely know where he's going with that ball, because there's one or two receivers who can get it. And so there he went. And then Watson went and made a spectacular, diving catch to come up with the football and turn his body and roll over to where there was definitely going to be possession, and, had the knee down, had everything a ref would want to be able to give a thumbs up on that being a catch and everything. So, I mean, like, that really stood out today. And then just the way Mahomes threw in a dime to Kelsey, just the windows he put that in, and just how Kelsey just nonchalantly he makes it. And there was one where Mahomes threw it in a window to where, like, in a game you'd be nervous because there's three guys in the area, but you've got to have that ball on point. And the kicker of it is Tranquil's in coverage, and Tranquil's, dropping into the zone and everything. And what happened was Tranquil was reading Kelsey. So when Kelsey's arms comes up, that's when Tranquil was like, okay, I need to go. I'm going to make the play on this. Travis didn't react, and that ball's already coming right at him. Travis did not react at all. Tranquil opened up a little bit more, and there was that window. And then Kelsey, bam, caught it right there. And it was just right there for him. And Tranquil, Tranquil had that kind of look and reaction where he's like, oh, that's them. And, he just had that acceptance to it. He was still frustrated he didn't make the play. But, some players obviously back and forth today said a couple of things that we can't necessarily get into. But they did, and nothing was bad. It was friendly competition, and it was good to see that, good to hear that. And then those were kind of my biggest key points from today. I thought even Powell had a couple good catches. Cornell Powell, I thought he had a couple good catches, getting to bump up a little bit rep wise. And then Noah Gray had a day too, where he got a lot of work today, and he was fully effective. Looked a little bit quicker than he had in the previous two practices, and he took advantage of his reps as well.
Yeah, and I mean, getting into the specifics on Nico, he had two incredible balls. One was an adjustment on a throw that I wasn't quite sure if it was a misfire on Mahomes' part. Ball just hung up a little bit, but Nico was going outside. Ball comes inside, but he made a great adjustment to catch the ball coming towards us into the end zone. And there was another one on a broken play where Chris Oladokin just pulled a Nico down there somewhere and chucked it towards the end zone, throwing him open. And Nico just raced and caught it. And that ball easily went over 50 yards because the line of scrimmage was short of the 50. So that was an absolute bomb. And kudos to Montrell Washington because he had a nice little catch in a similar situation going up, making a contested ball. It was the exact opposite corner from us. So I don't know if it was a touchdown for sure. He celebrated like it was a touchdown, and the offense celebrated like it was a touchdown. So I'll give it to them. But yeah, I mean, there were plays being up and down the lineup today on the offensive side.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the Remigio touchdown one that was lofted up there. Because for people that are kind of wondering, I wonder what that play is like. It's like when the Chiefs played the Bills. It's not exactly the same route. It's not exactly the same play, but they had the same vibe for how wide open it was. Is when the Chiefs played the Bills back in the conference championship back in 2020 with how wide open Kelsey was on that touchdown that put him up like 36-21 or 36-24 or something like that. And he was just wide open, and like it had that same style loft. I felt like I was rewatching history in person when I saw that football and the way it was up there like that, but just how wide open he was at the same time. I was like, man, this is like Kelsey's touchdown in the conference championship. It just spot on, just felt exactly the same to it.
This was a little bit different practice than we had been seeing because this was also the week. Chiefs have 4 practices, so it's also the week that Andy Reid breaks it up and break up the monotony a little bit and also get a little head start by looking towards opponents down the road. So typically during this week, what he would have done during the week would have been having each day focus on one of the AFC West opponents. Today was focusing on your week 1 opponent. So it was getting ready for the Baltimore Ravens. So usually, Nick, we see these offseason practices. We see a lot more 1s versus 1s, 2s versus 2s, like you see at training camp. This was more like a regular season practice, isn't it? It was scout teams running against the starters. You're serving the number 1 team. You're running plays that the opponents have run before. Hey, a lot of things will change. There'll be newcomers, but like part of that. Hey, McCole Hardman, Nico Remigio. I think Montrell Washington was in there too. We're rotating through playing Zay Flowers. I mean, it was that kind of thing. The tight ends are marked, so you know who Mark Andrews is, and they're trying to defend there. With that in mind, what did you see from the defense on Friday, especially, in doing that? And kind of, I think it was probably more valuable for the defense on Friday as far as getting that scout team exposure to me than maybe the offense.
It just allowed the guys to kind of get some feels for the formations and kind of get some kind of just, I would say, just kind of know that, okay, could see this, and just kind of get them a little bit familiar with kind of part of their past and everything. I mean, we'll see, like whenever preseason games start and everything, some of the base formations that the Ravens are going to work with will kind of it will kind of answer some things about how they may want to utilize this receiver group or this receiver, that receiver, because some of the stuff they're putting in preseason, they fully plan on running for the first month and a half of the season. So you just kind of take a look at what's different with that versus what you've kind of scouted from last year, because there's some stuff they're going to have to do differently whenever they have Derrick Henry in there, because they're going to need extra tight ends to be able to help Derrick Henry kind of be able to run the way he wants to. Because I don't know if the Ravens offensive line is the same as it was last year. And Derrick Henry's a running back that needs a certain, I'm going to use that word, runway. He needs a certain amount of time to get up to top end speed, and he needs a clear lane to be able to do that. Otherwise, you have like the 2019 Chiefs AFC Championship game where, he gets stopped behind the line of scrimmage by the Daniel Sorensens, Frank Clarks of the world, and isn't able to get going. So it's going to be really interesting if they use Derrick Henry in the option with Lamar. That's something I'm kind of curious about, to where Lamar stretches it, gives Henry the right amount of time, and then tosses it to him, or what the Ravens have cooked up to be able to try to make that offense sing in the way that it needs to, because they need their run game to be effective quickly, and they need Derrick Henry to be in rhythm quickly, and then kind of slowly work the passing offense the way that they want down the road here. So, I mean, for the Chiefs defense, it's good that they were able to get some looks and everything, kind of be able to see it. And I mean, based on the jersey that some of the receivers had on, it wasn't hard for me to be able to be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure based on size and everything, that's who that person is going to be, and that's who that person's probably going to be. So when I'm not going to say who, but even the running back they had in there was built more like Derrick Henry size-wise than some of the other running backs they have. So it was a nice little glimpse there.
I thought, as far as individual plays go, I mean, I thought it was a pretty good day for the secondary in particular. One good bit of news for the Chiefs is that Brian Cook and Najee Johnson were both doing team drills. That's a change this week from what we saw there in the first 2 weeks. That was certainly something the team was hoping, that both those guys would be ready by the end of the phase 3, that they would be on the field fully. So that gives you great indication that they're going to be ready to go for the beginning of training camp. And Najee had a fantastic pass breakup on Friday. I mean, I'd heard from some of the players that he had some pretty good plays earlier in the week too, and he started getting his reps back and an interception. So, I mean, Najee, once again, give him some time to recover here, but he's certainly looked like, and sounds like he's picked up right where he left off before the injury last year.
Yeah, and I know the play you're referencing with Najee back there in the end zone, he looked like he climbed up a ladder, because he was in great position. He was in front of the tight end. He was recovering at the time. I know who it is. I just can't remember if we're supposed to that one we put out there or not. I think we
can say it in highlights. So
okay.
Yes.
So, but I mean, Najee climbed that ladder and he just deflected that football away, and like there was absolutely no chance that tight end was getting that football. And watching, I watched a handful of plays of how Brian Cook was doing, how he was backpedaling, how he was turning, how he was getting there. He looks like he's getting comfortable back to where he was beforehand. So I have no complaints on that part. So, I mean, it was encouraging to see him out there. It was great to see him and Najee. And Najee looked like he's picking up where he left off last year on some of the plays he was making, and his explosiveness and how he was getting across the field at times and how he was running and turning. So it was good. It was a good next stage to see both of them out there during team and taking part in that and getting to do more of that work.
Yeah, and and some other guys had good plays too. Nick Jones had a fantastic one and back down in the end zone on a deep play. Making those plays, and especially the Najee one too. I mean, being able to make those plays downfield without committing interference is also another part of it. And those were two outstanding plays by both those guys. So yeah. Really impressive to me. That's one thing. I mean, once again, I mean, that's what you can do during this time of year. I mean, we've talked about it before. It's a broken record, Nick. I mean, we're talking about you can't really judge a whole lot of the trenches because there's so much that those guys can't do. But hey, the defenders are even pass coverage are also handicapped a little bit. So by the fact that when you're talking about defensive players making plays in OTAs when they can't maybe hand fight as much and they can't hit and everything, that tells me a lot. So that's why I'm pretty bullish on this young secondary, and that, I mean, they've got some guys that make a play. And Kamal Haddon today had a really nice strip out.
Yeah.
Whether you want to say it was a fumble or just breaking up a catch, one or the other. I mean, he had it. So you credit him with the one or the other, but it was a really nice play.
Yeah, he was very instinctive on that one because he knew immediately to do that, and he was in good position, but he immediately knew to do that and went to that, and that's something that the Chiefs team definitely needs, kind of mentality-wise overall, to force as many turnovers as possible to get the ball back to Patrick Mahomes and to that Chiefs offense. So, yeah, I mean, they on that front, look, and Jaden Hicks was getting tutelage under Steve Spagnuolo yet again, and it's not a bad thing. But I'm just telling you, I think they got some plans for Hicks and just his size and his stature and how imposing he can be on that football field. And you want his presence on that football field. So I I'm just telling you, like, I mean, I know everybody keeps talking about, how they're going to replace L'Jarius Sneed and everything, and I totally get that. But I'm just telling you, there's been a lot of years where the Chiefs secondary, you're like, if they lose this or this guy, they're in a world of hurt. But like today, just again, watch them today and watch them during OTAs. I'm like, they got so many options, and they're actually going to have to waive some players that are probably going to go on other rosters if the Chiefs can't sneak them on practice squad. So, I mean, look, just for me, like, I'm like, there are so many opportunities for them to have kind of really a plug and play secondary that can cause teams a lot of headaches. Because at the end of the day, based on the personnel you can bring in and skill set wise, there's just a lot that I think they can do depending on the formations they're having to go against.
I'm going to use the Jaden Hicks as an opportunity to jump off into the softball game last night, Nick, and talk about some of our observations from that, because this was kind of an opportunity to see some of the rookies up close. I mean, some of the rookies we've seen at the podium, but it's not like, in the locker room where you get to stand next to them and talk to them. Last night, there was some opportunities for that. I got to stand next to Jaden Hicks for a few minutes, and I mean, he's big. He's listed at 6'1", 215. That's wrong. I mean, I don't know what that. I got to double check maybe his combine measurements, because he was almost looking me in the eye, and I'm 6'4", Nick. Jaden Hicks is huge, and I mean that in a good way. I mean, he's much bigger than a safety would normally be, but so is Kyle Hamilton, and it works out pretty well for him. Jaden Hicks is absolutely going to destroy a few people this year. I mean, he's got obviously some things to learn and everything, but this dude is going to lay the hammer a few times, and I mean, it's going to be a highlight play.
Yeah, no, they're going to make sure they find some spots for him on the football field, and there's some veterans that haven't seen him yet across the league, and when they do, they're going to be like, wow, that is a big safety. That is a safety that's not messing around. They will know where he's at, and they will be accounting for him early on, just purely on his size alone.
Yeah, I don't know where. I mean, I know he measured 6'2", 211 at the combine. I still don't buy that. He looks every bit of, to me, it looked every bit of 6'3". So
yeah.
Maybe he was wearing heels. I don't know.
No, he was not. I saw the broadcast. He had normal shoes on.
Let's talk about also another player who was pretty impressive, because, and I will say this with a small caveat, which is that Louis Rees-Zammit said he never picked up a softball bat. And I have no reason not to believe him, because why would he pick up a softball bat in the UK and in Wales? But I would imagine that he's got a little bit of cricket experience. And I'm told that, hey, in the UK, in physical education and PE, you always play some rounders. So he's probably picked up a bat and hit something from time to time. But the fact that the dude can be at a charity softball game and within like 6 swings start hitting balls over the fence, just to me, just tells you what an athlete this kid is, what his hand-to-eye coordination is. I mean, I feel like he could probably just go out there and pick up any sport. I mean, hey, if you need somebody on your curling team, the first guy I call would be this guy.
Yeah, I mean, the impressive thing for Rees-Zammit out there was that on the home run derby, when he did that part of it, like, you could tell he was still getting used to the ball and kind of the bat swing and the position and angle you're supposed to hit at, because you could tell it looked like he was hitting as if he was doing cricket. But then, like, once they got into the actual game and he got enough swings and everything, he hit 3 different home runs during the game. And Drew Tranquil hit, I think, 3 home runs as well. So, I mean, those two were clearly the most hand-eye coordinated, athletic, power, speed, keeping your stance proper, and being able to really kind of just swing through it and everything. Another one that I kind of found funny was Chu Godric, who would never let go of the bat anytime he hit it. He kept it in his right hand running down the first base line. I found that funny, and thankfully nobody got hurt when they were covering first, because he had the bat in his hand. But I mean, yeah, every time, man, he had it in his right hand, never let go of it. So I mean, you could tell there were some guys that had never played softball or baseball, and they were just going through it and being a good teammate and being a good sport about all of it. And there's some guys out there that like Nick Bolton, you knew was going to crush it, and Nick Bolton had a good looking swing. And
Yeah.
I mean, so did Tranquil. Like those two had really good looking swings. So, and then Mahomes, let's be honest. I mean, Mahomes knows how to play baseball. Got a pretty good family background in that one on top of his ability by itself.
If I had to list off the guys who I think are probably the most humble players on this team, I mean, I have to start with Joe Tooney because Joe Tooney isn't going to trash talk anybody and is just he's a Terminator for a reason. I mean, he keeps his
Yeah.
emotions in check. If I had to take my second most humble player on the team, it would probably be Drew Tranquil because Drew is also, I mean, hey, he's very good with the media. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that he's not one to typically trash talk or say anything too controversial. I mean, he is a very courteous young man. All of these things. This dude last night is the leadoff batter for the defense, calls his shot and then hits the first pitch over the fence, and then whipped out his camera and did selfies around the bases.
So,
That's some swag, Nick.
well, I mean, Drew Tranquil says it's way better in LA.
Well, that's behind them. Chiefs now have 3 days left of the offseason program, Nick. They get back next week for the mandatory minicamp, so we're going to see who shows up. They have practice Tuesday and Wednesday. They have the ever famous and dreaded conditioning test on Thursday. That's kind of the prelude to especially show the newcomers and the rookies what they face when they get to St. Joe because they got to pass that conditioning test to practice once they get there. Anything that's on your mind as far as observations, things you're looking for next week?
Before that, I want to double check with you. This one, I also want to mention from earlier, Josh Williams had an interception on Wentz today, right? If I remember correctly.
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we didn't forget that one because that was also another promising play for Josh Williams out there today because he made it look open and then he took it away. So there's that. But yeah, no, I mean next week it's like for me, here see if Kadarius Toney's there. I'm sure we'll see Chris Jones there, and he'll be just as playful as Chris Jones can be on a football field, and obviously we'll see Pacheco. So Pacheco and Jones on the same field will be interesting in how they hype up each other's side on the team, maybe during team drills and 7-on-7. So I'll be intrigued by that potentially on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then they go out with after conditioning test is done. They before they all leave to head out of town and get their freedom. There's going to be pretty big ceremony that will probably be the talk of social media before it's all said and done.
Yeah, there's going to be a little jewelry handed out next week before the end of the week, and maybe your final little Super Bowl 58 celebration.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's not an open event, Nick, so it's why we're not talking about where it's going to be or anything like that.
Right.
But yes, there will be red carpet coverage at a lot of places. So there will be photos and interviews and a lot of things coming from that. I know people are going to be excited to see it. Any parting thoughts, Nick? Anything to wrap up with?
No, we will. You and I will try to do one at the end of next week at some point. And then you and I have some ideas for some pods we'll do, so we won't stop the podcast even after mandatory minicamp's over, but we have some topics that I think will interest fans and keep fans engaged and kind of get you hyped up for the start of training camp. And I got a feeling within the next week and a half, we'll probably have a pretty good idea when all the training camp dates are.
Yep, we should find out here pretty soon so you can start making your plans and figuring out when you're going to trek up to St. Joe and just how ridiculous early it is going to start.
Yeah, because I'm literally waiting on that to decide some PTO days in July.
Yeah, it's going to be an early one, folks. I'm just going to give you a heads up. I don't know the exact date yet; hasn't been officially announced. But Chiefs playing on Thursday night just ruins it, Nick. I mean, when you play on September 5th, I mean, there's some benefits to it, but it also means you start training camp 3 days before everybody else does.
Like I said, I'm just waiting for it to come out so I can mark down my PTO days because I got to burn through some more.
Well, that's the best reason, but you can't use too many, Nick, because you need to have a December to remember.
Don't worry, that's the other half of it. So
okay,
the problem was, like I'll tell you, basically, man, I left like 5 or 6 PTO days on the table last year.
Oh, wow.
I didn't properly, I was going to save them all for December to remember, and then I had to do stuff. So I was like, all right, not taking that day off. Can't take that day off. All right, well, so this year, I got to make sure that I afford myself some opportunities to make sure I burn through the amount of days that I have available, because, I don't take a lot of vacation. I don't take a lot of PTO.
You do not. But it sounds like for you, it's going to be a December to remember and then Christmas in July.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Gotta wait for those dates to come out.
Well, we thank you all once again for joining us here on 41 is the Mic. We will be back with you next week to recap OTAs once again. And like Nick said, we've got some great stuff lined up after the offseason. The program is done and before training camp to keep you up to date and get you ready for when training camp hits the ground. So with that, we will see you next week.
Until next time, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.